It's like divine light. Wickedly divine light at that. So I was enjoying doing the video that I was doing earlier, and I was like, you know what? I'm not done talking yet. So I drove for a little bit, and I have a little bit of battery charge, so we'll see how long this goes. I'm hoping Lolita comes back on. If you don't come back on while I'm live, I liked it when you were in the last video. Anyways, I was thinking about music for one. And that song by Joni Mitchell from Practical Magic, well, not from Practical Magic, but that's where I first heard it because I was an 80s child. And it's that one, because I could drink a case of you. I don't know, I can't do her voice on that, but I love it. That whole, it's so bitter and so sweet. And everything about that reminds me of my DM. It totally does. And also the movie, too, because I remember as a kid watching that sort of movie and not really having any idea how powerful wishes are or how powerful children's wishes are. And I've always been a sort of hopeless romantic. And I was thinking, like, I mean, I never wished for a guy who could do cactus-shaped pancakes and had two different colored eyes. I don't think I was ever that specific. But there were certain qualities that I wanted that I thought about a lot. I don't know. I was alone a lot as a kid. So it's funny. I was very anti-girly stuff, like because of how my mom was like so excited to it, and so it's kind of funny in some respects. Like I've always been a girl. I've always been a woman. I've always been a lady. But don't make me be a lady. You know what I mean? Let me get there on my own. So I was thinking about it though, and I was listening to, like, the last video. I had called it "Let It Be Me," and I meant to start the video singing that song because I mean Ray LaMontage is awesome, and he reminds me of my DM in some ways. And like I wouldn't say that was my DM's like favorite kind of music. That's more me. I like the folksy soft stuff, but he always like we always loved exchanging music. It was always worth listening to. It was always a new adventure, and we loved to explore. Like I wanted to say the idiosyncrasies of a song, but I don't think that's quite the right word. Like the different elements, like how do you think he did the guitar, or what chord do you think that's in, or what key is that in, or what do you think the count of that is, and what do you think about the matchup between the pace of the guitar and the drums? Like, I mean, we really talked about it. We both had backgrounds in music in different sorts of ways, but also together, because like they collided, and they also mixed together in pleasant ways. And then, like, yeah, it was nice. And I remember, it's funny because when Separation started, he was all about it. He pulled out these old CDs that I burned for him 20 years ago. That was like my version of a mixtape. It was all about him. That was romantic as fuck. I don't give a fuck about the rest of it. I loved that. And he was telling me about how, like, he told me many times about how we always seem to have, like, one of our main love languages is music. And I know a lot of twins share that, but I don't know how much of a depth it is. Like, I know a lot of people share, like, they like music, they share music. There's certain songs that they have with each other. They might even talk in, like, sending songs to each other, and like, listen to this, it's a message for you kind of thing. But I mean, we really, like, I mean, we're musicians too, and I booked bands, and we put bands together, and like we do all the things, you know what I mean? Like, it's definitely, it's both what I think most people describe theirs as, and also so much more. And so I kind of liked the idea of using, not always using song titles and stuff. I almost called this video "I'm Not Done Talking Yet," because that's totally the energy that I think my DM would be in if he felt like he wasn't gonna get beat up for it. I mean, he's sassy like that. He's sassy, kind of like a, like, foghorn leghorn. Oh, I don't even know. Like, he had a nickname when I met him. A fair amount of guys called him. It was like Big Pimpin', which he's not. Like, he's not that sort at all. But he will put on this attitude, this attitude, cabbitude about it. I just remember when I met him, like, one of his favorite jokes was like to go up to like a random hot girl who's on the phone, on her cell phone, and cell phones were still fairly new for everybody to have, and be like, "You ain't gotta call me. I'm right here." You know, like that. I was telling our oldest son about that, and he was like, "Really? That was Dad?" I was like, "Oh yeah, that was Dad." Like, that was Dad. Like, he was the cool hot shot when he wanted to be, when he felt free and being out there, and we weren't. torturing him. And you know what's funny? I know a lot of people are like, eh, and I'm like, no, I like that. I like bratty guys. I like him, and mostly I think that's just where I'm at. I love him. I have a Capricorn Venus too. It's not uncommon for a Capricorn Venus. We're like swans. Like, we kind of mate for life. And I mean, even though, like, I'm not trying to pull him back or nothing, but I'm like, I'm comfortable with that as my feelings. And it's likely, this is going to be weird to say because I believe it is a twin flame relationship and I don't believe it's going to go anywhere. But I'm also a very rational person because I like to be, and because it feels very practical in a world where rationality is kind of prioritized. That, like, even if we're supposed to be separated for a long time, it's still only been 22 months after a 14 and a half year relationship. You know, total 20 years in that. 22 months ain't that fucking long. The pirates and potatoes can just sit their butts down, or they can go to therapy, like me and Rudy did, and me and my Cabbit did, and then I did even after that. That's what it's for. You know? Anyways, the thing I got to thinking about, though, was one of my favorite romantic gestures that I did for him. Well, two, actually. The first one was in our first apartment that I got for us. Thank you very much. And so he liked Roger Rabbit. And so I decided I would do the let me count the way sort of thing. And I got the money together and I bought a dozen roses. And then to each rose, I attached a reason that I loved him and a clue to where the next rose was. And I hid them all over the house. Like, there was one that started on the door, or not the house, it was an apartment, and it started on the door, and then it came, and there was one like right across from the door, and then the next ones were hidden a little bit more. One was like in his in the box where the beers were in the fridge, so he could grab a beer after work. And another one, it's funny, I often did scavenger hunts that kind of led him to where he'd already go anyways, because he's a creature of habit, and so it was amusing to kind of do both. Or they'd be near to where he would go anyways. Like, I knew after work he would always come home and use the bathroom, so like it was a logical place to put another one, and he could totally stop in there because he knew I wasn't going to be offended if he took a little time, you know, like, and that was one of his favorites too. But then the next one, so there was we had this funny joke going, because we'd been talking about marriage for a while. I was not, like, I am totally the type to propose to a guy, no qualms there. But because of the way that he grew up and because of his certain bratty proclivities, I knew that it needed to be him who proposed to me. And for me, I wanted him to be a little bit of a fool for me. Like, it's funny, he took it overboard, but like, I mean, it could have just simply been, get down on your knee for me at a park and be like, will you marry me? Like, that would have been fine, you know, like, do a little traditional if you want. Or, because he used to joke too about, like, what if I ask your father's permission? And I'm like, I think he'd look at you really funny and wonder what the fuck you're doing, but you're welcome to do that if you want to. Like, I'm not gonna wait for him, if that's what you're saying. Like, but I mean, we've had thorough talks about it. But he was having CPTSD attacks at one point when we moved into my parents' house, and I had taken him, I was taking him different places. He wasn't working at the time. It had been a long time since he hadn't worked, and it was weird the way that he left the old job. They screwed him pretty hard. And then I don't know, I was just trying to help him. I was trying to help us. We were all in a really weird place. And so I took us to these different parks and different rest stops that I liked, that sometimes I would go to clear my head, and some new places too. And I took him to this one, and we were sitting in the Explorer, playing with guitar and just kind of talking, and he was like coming out of a bit of a panic attack effectively. And I remember I was standing outside of the car on the passenger side, on his side, and we were joking. I can't remember exactly what we were joking about, but it was about us stuff. And I said something like, well, I just want you to marry me, stupid, you know. And it was funny, true to bratty fashion as he is, in the fact that he did not want to have to be the one to propose because he was nervous he would do it wrong. He said, you proposed to me. You did. I know you did. I heard you. You did. Like, even before I had a chance to argue that I didn't, he was already there. And I thought that was so adorable. But I said, you know what? Okay, look, I'm willing to bend this rule a little bit, but I know I'm not wrong. So, and we were in couples therapy at the time too. It just started on it, so it was like, okay, we got a little time too. And I'm not in a big rush. I wanted to get married, he wanted to get married, but it was more about the spiritual end of it. We wanted to get handfasted, but I wanted a wedding reception where we celebrated with everybody we knew. I knew everybody was pirates, but I I guess I thought that he was kind of making more of it up in his head because of the way things were. I was giving everybody else, I think, a lot more benefit of the doubt than I gave him, and that's the thing I feel remorseful about. Is like I should have just believed him, and trusted my instincts in the first place about everybody else. Like I tried to start giving them all better chances because I thought, like, in fact, it was him who was sticking up for them. That's the thing that gets me. I've yet to hear any of them stick up for him, and he has stuck up for all of them. And he has said nice things about all of them, even though he has been honest about the ways that they have been. I have not seen the same reciprocity come from any of them, and that really irks me. Use that word, irks. Anyways, I told him, I said, you know what, I will do it, but that will be the first proposal. Because you're a Cancer with a lot of Aries placements. You have big anxiety, and it's fine. It's adorable. So I want to make sure that this is like, if I ask you one time, that doesn't give you any time to think about it. Also, I've been thinking about proposing to you for a while. I have all these different ideas, and so I'm going to propose to you 7 times. I got through 4 before he panicked and screwed up what was going to be the 5th one. So I know I was right. I'm also glad that I did them, because the main memory that was coming in is one of the times that I proposed to him. I spent all day writing out the 40 reasons that I love him. Different reasons, too. All different reasons. I remember I asked that on this channel. Can you write out 40 reasons you love your twin flame? And I was just curious if anybody else even would say that they could, let alone had. And I was pleasantly surprised by those of you that were like, I have not, but I'm going to try. And it's funny because, like, what I did then is when he came home, he came in the RV, I had him sitting there, and I put on, I think this is the one where I asked him to put his phone on record and put it in front of me so that it could record me reading something to him. And then I read it to him with the little proposal about wanting to marry me. And he said yes. And, like, it's funny because it was really cheesy and corny, and I like that sort of stuff, and he liked that sort of stuff, and I love it. I don't know if he still has it or not. He probably does. He doesn't ever get rid of anything, and he has yet to get over any of his exes. So I know that even though I'm technically not in that category, I also am in that category, and it always makes me laugh. He's still holding on to a bunch of my stuff that's like intimate stuff that makes me laugh. Like, don't tell me you're over it. You can't even give me that stuff back. Like, even when I ask for it, you either cry or you make some sort of weird joke. And then you don't want to do it. Like, even everybody else is like, dude. Like, dude, that's not even good for your current relationship that you say that you want to be in. But that's my DM, and it's okay. It's okay. It wouldn't be as interesting of a story without it. So anyways, I was thinking about that 40, like both the Let Me Count the Ways and also the 40 Reasons that I Love It. Now, I don't remember what all those 40 reasons were, which is funny because I remember a lot of things. I don't remember all of them, all of what they were, but I was thinking about doing another video that was like that. And then that Joni Mitchell song came on, but I could drink a case of you. And then, like, so bitter and so sweet. It's true. It's like both. It's there. It's a thing. And then I was thinking about, do I want to name this, like, 40 more reasons that I love my Rudy Bug, or no? And then I was like, no, you know what? I just want to talk about reasons that I love him. Because it feels good. And I'm having a hard time sleeping anyways, and he's allowing the pirates to make him be mean to me and also withhold our child from me, and that's a little stressful. Even though I know it's gonna work out and shit, like, it's like, really? Like, come on. Like, you're just butthurt because I'm not gonna hold your secrets anymore if you're gonna throw me under the bus about shit. Like, it's your ball to turn into a more mature ball, but I'm at least going to put my feelings to good value in allowing myself to heal and allowing myself to go, you know what, it's understandable that I'm thinking about all this stuff, and it's not hurting anybody. And I know also later, like, I mean, it could be like a year later or something, but my DM will totally love this, so whatever. He likes to be that guy too. It's kind of one of the things that makes me laugh. I know one of the reasons that he's avoiding talking to me is because whenever she did something dramatic, although hers were all toxic, I'm just being theatrical, but like, she's like, aggressive and shit like that, and is prideful about it. And so like, but like, she invades every bit of privacy. She texts everyone else, including me, through his phone, instigates shit, won't fucking own it, won't face me face to face without pretending to be nice after threatening me and shit like that. Like, it's not a fucking good situation. In any case, like, he's been saying from time to time, oh, but I like that. What he means is he likes a woman who is a little possessive. He does like that. That's a pattern of his things. I don't actually mind that. I, for a long time, assumed he did not like possessive women because he did not talk highly of the women who were possessive with him. So I worked on my possessiveness so I was not possessive with him by the time that we got into official relationship and shit. And also, I mean, when we met early on, we were friends with benefits. I was aware of the situation. Also, our age was a thing. Like, it was it would have been a challenge at that time. And so, like, I never really felt like I had the place to be possessive of him up until we were together. And, like, I'm laughing. He's still holding on to some kink stuff of ours that was like our DS relationship. It's like, you're basically saying that you're still mine. I don't know why, unless you feel that way, which I know is the truth, but I'm sure that to everybody else, it's because he doesn't want his stuffy to be naked, which is really funny to me. It's like, doesn't that make it more apparent that you don't want to lose the stuff? Like, what are you doing, man? I know how hard it was, but you gotta pick one or the other. Actually, he doesn't. I find it all adorable. It's just really funny. It's like, why do you put yourself in these positions? It's like telling people, don't tell me the end of the movie. You'll spoil it for me. Like, if they wanted to spoil it for you, they could then spoil it for you. You just told them how to spoil it for you, you know? But that's one of the things I love about him, though. He's got this, like, he's one of the smartest guys I've ever met, like, literally intellectually. But nobody else sees it. And I think a lot of times because of the karma loops that he's been going through, the codependent stuff. But one of my favorite things about him, one of the things I love most about him, and why I stayed so long with him, and why I'm still in love with him, is because he always does the right thing when he's ready to. He has a stubborn bratty streak, and he's one of those guys that, like, you could lay out a map and, like, a succinct, simplified guidebook on how to do everything, where to find all the right tools, and he'd be like one of those stereotypical men that's like, I don't need no map. You know what I mean? Which is funny, he does use maps, but with life and stuff like that, like, that's kind of part of the way he has been. He's actually growing out of that. He has been learning a lot spiritually in his entrapment with the pirates and potatoes, which is one of my favorite things. Like, I know I'm not the only one he showed it to. We actually had several conversations about how he tried to have said conversations with the various pirates and potatoes, both family, friends, all that stuff. And they were either like, it was like way over their heads, and they're like, those words are too big for me, or they were in a place of like, oh, that's just crazy talk. And of course, like most people, don't talk about spiritual shit because a bunch of other shitty people decide to go, oh, that's crazy talk, when they're just worried that they have not explored enough, and they would feel crazy if they were to actually allow themselves to experience the infinite magic that there is in the rest of the world. So, if anybody's doing that to you, just love them anyways, and be like, I'm gonna go back to riding my rainbow unicorn, thank you very much. You know what I mean? It's a lot more fun than sitting over there in there is no magic, miracles, or enlightenment world. Like, but anyways, you know, it's funny. I've never been like upset about that quality of him, though there have been times it's been frustrating. Mostly as a parent. Like, I've always said, like, if it's just you, it was just you and me, it would be different. Like, I'd be happy to let you do your weird things, like, and sometimes be a player, and sometimes be like, he's Virgo Mars too, so it's like it's the was it the virgin and the prostitute, and he has definite qualities of both, and it fits in with the Cancer side too, and I don't mind that. I really don't. I'm like open to polyamory, I'm open to monogamy and ethical non-monogamy and all that stuff. It's part of why he liked me. Like, I'm open to it. Problem is that nobody else in the rest of the piratey world is acceptable with that. They all want to say they have monogamy and then cheat on each other. I don't get that. Like, if you have a proclivity to do that, why can't you just own that you like that? There's even kinks out there. It's like, what is it, like vixens and hot wives or bulls and hot wives. I don't know. People like that stuff. Like, I don't get the whole judgment on the things, you know? Like, this is 2021. Like, if you like it that way, the only thing you're doing wrong at that point is trying to get into old school monogamous situations and marriages and then cheating on people. You're violating consent, you're violating original agreements, you're breaking hearts, you're doing all that shit. If you want to have multiple partners or you want to have the option to do it, then fucking build a relationship where you can do that shit. It ain't that motherfucking hard anymore. You know, like, seriously. Seriously. Ugh. Anyways, I love the quality of him. He always gets there. That's part of, over the last 22 months, what really helped me a lot, too, because, I mean, my challenge was I did have disorganized attachment. I got that into anxious attachment, and that was really where I think it sat the most for me. I think I was mostly anxiously attached in the first place, which is the most common attachment trauma for most people. The rest are down from there, except for once you get into healthy emotional security, healthy emotional attachment. And, you know, when you have any form of anxiety, it's basically your ego has been over conditioned to look for anything that might potentially hurt you. I mean, and it'll make shit up sometimes if it needs to, or if you grew up with people that made shit up all the time. If you watch my last video, like, look at it, like, a lot of the people around me, it's like they'll go from, like, they really won't have a reason for doing something, and when you ask why they do something illogical, they give you an even more illogical answer. Like with my mom, you know, as a 21-ish months ago, being mad about my son calling me, as we had established as the only person he needed to call, to go out into the driveway and wait for me. He asked if he could. Even if he hadn't asked if he could, it was daylight, it's a big driveway, nobody speeds, none of that stuff. And when I asked them why they were so upset, they said I might run him over. And it was like, or they were afraid that I might not see him and run him over. Like, that's what they said. And it's like, that's, and I even pointed out, I said, that's so illogical. Like, one, I'm a seeing-eyed person driving a vehicle. I drive it safely. He was almost 8 at the time. And so, like, you know, pretty tall. It's daylight. He usually wears loud colors. And I pull into the driveway slowly. It's completely irrational to suggest that it was okay for you to be upset and shitty to him and me and each other because you thought that a really unlikely thing was going to happen, right? But I also recognize, though, in this separation space, my DM does do that, but it's not just him. Like, his sisters and them too had that quality of, like, this whole time going, don't, you know, either if you let him have the kids, be careful because of the person he's with. And then when things started to go sour, instead of helping out, it was, no, we're completely ignoring him, nails balls to the wall. That's what you should do. Withhold the kids, get all the custody stuff done, because if you should ever let him have the kids for 5 minutes, because of him and the person that he's with, he might take them and withhold them, and you'll never be able to do anything until you do a thing. And I'm like going, I mean, I could understand some of that if there was, like, the mixture in of the humanness, the good, the bad, all that kind of stuff, but there wasn't any of that in there. And, like, that's one of the things I like about my DM, is actually he is honest about a lot of things. And I used to get frustrated about the time it would take him to, like, go from it's kind of this bratty, like, I'm not gonna do that, I don't need to do that, and then, okay, I need to do that. That's probably a thing that I need to do. And then, okay, I'm doing the thing, and then trying to do the thing, and then pirates will come in, and then it's frustrating, and some more cycles happen, and then potatoes come in, and then that's more frustrating. But then he gets back to it, and he gets back to it, and he gets back to it. And he tends to set himself up with a lot of ego traps. Now, the funny thing is, like, I set out a goal in the beginning to primarily work on myself, and to do so using the feedback that I know that he had given me that was about stuff I was that I genuinely needed to work on, that was not just a projection. And one of the things that I needed to work on was having more faith, because I mean, and growing up with my own pirates and stuff, it wasn't just question everything, it was like be sarcastically skeptical of everything. And also make sure that you point out all the worst case scenarios that could happen. Like, that's the sort of thing, like, with my mom and my son in the driveway, right? And so I realized in the first few months, I was like, I did do that a lot. Like, he would give me a scenario, And I mean, he was being bratty. I'm not going to own all the stuff. He was being immature. I'm also aware that he's immature, and I don't necessarily mind that. But I was not helping myself or meeting my goals or helping him by jumping into like here's the like let's say he had a scenario that he wanted to do and I neither wanted to do it but I didn't want him to get in trouble, so I'd be like, well, but if you do that you could get really screwed or this could happen this way. And a friend actually helped me see, you know what, yes, that's a logical thing for you to say. Like I'm rarely illogical, even when I'm being absurd. I don't even understand how I have that ability. If I figure it out, I'll explain it to somebody. But that is part of my MO, modus operandi. And but she said, you know, like we were talking about Enneagram types, and like I'm an 8, and she was a 6, and he's a 6, and it's like in an emotional language when somebody is kind of doing a pushing sort of thing with you, you can at least like it doesn't necessarily mean it'll change anything, but I could change for me and play with like instead of being like if you do that thing that you I know you have not thought all the way through, it's probably going to bite you in the butt really hard. And you know, and here's scenario a disaster scenario ABC. Instead of doing that, go okay. What would you like? You know, what would be your intention in that? What's your goal? What outcome would you want? And part of this was because they were helping me think about well, not just my conversations with him, but with anybody, because I've had some challenges with communication because of my ADHD and mild autism, and so like I wanted to explore that more. And it was just easy enough with him because he and I talked with each other a lot. So it was there. And I thought about him a lot. So it was there. And she said, you know, just humor him. You know, like you said that you wanted to work on having more faith. Like part of it starts in you, and the other part of it starts with showing it. And the other part of it is like, it's like even if I was right about how the scenario would go, I didn't have data to necessarily predict that the conversation could not go in a different way, right? And the more I did that, the more it did. And now it's funny. Now I have much better communication skills. Like and communication does not scare me anymore. It used to scare me because it was challenging. Either I overdid it or I underdid it or I did it just perfectly and it scared people. And I think I had a challenge too with I did like a trigger of I did not like when somebody did not like me, but not in a typical fashion, more like I suppose it's understandable. I mean, getting triggers like not just when you don't like me. I've never been like offended when like a person or two does not like me, but when people specifically try to attack my character and reputation when I have genuinely not done anything wrong, even if I did like even if I did a couple of things wrong, like I've more been kind of that person to be in the place of it's weird to say I do a lot of good in my life, so it's kind of both can be true. I am a very benevolent person, but that does not mean I am an angel. I've been had plenty of times where it's like I allowed myself to be in various situations because I personally was not doing a wrong thing in my own life and was expecting everyone else to be managing their lives. But like as in the case with my Cabbit, with my DM, when we first met, we were FWBs, and he was married. I knew he was married. He actually wanted to make sure before we really went into that direction that I knew about the circus going on and stuff. So, like, he wasn't necessarily planning on introducing me, but he knew that he was in a mess, and he didn't want to just be like, well, he didn't want to be like a player in the sense of like, no, I don't have anybody and do all this and that. Like he's funny like that. He is a player and he's also not. Like, he is because he's an emotional person and he's codependent. But if the codependency was not there, he'd be the loyalest motherfucker ever. And ironically, if the codependence wasn't there, he wouldn't be stuck in messes and stuff to where he gets in. It's weird. I mostly only understand it because of my own healing and a big spiritual lesson, and both can be true. Like there are times when you should have two things that should be mutually exclusive, but they're not because we're human and we're like that. And you know what? I like that too because I am both the most mature and the most immature person. And among the people that I know, like, I'm the least ladylike and the most ladylike, right? And, like, I'm like least foolish and the most foolish. So it happens, like I'm sure everybody's got different ways that they are either both or somewhere in between. And I like that about humans in general. I've always especially liked that about Cabbit, about my Rudy Bug. Like, he's funny, especially being a Cancer man. Cancer men typically fit into that, but it's like, there are many qualities that he has. I don't see them as any less manly, and I like a lot of the more modern conscious movements that don't see, like nail polish is not a girl or a boy thing anymore, and I like that. I don't think it ever needed to be, but it definitely could have been defined as women only or girls only for a long time. Now, we never got as far into nail polish, but he did talk about nail polish. But there's many things that he likes to do that are definitely they're still masculine because there's no gender attached to it. But I know that the pissy pirates in his world would definitely, they would emasculate him for having any sort of a sensitive side, for literally the pirate that he's been with and the people that have been using his house to cheat on their spouses are sitting there telling him he's being too nice to me when there was nothing going on. He actually opened the door many drunk nights to have said conversations, and I could have gone there. There was even a time when him and the person had a big old fight, and he has ambiguous language, but 20 years is a long fucking time. I understood the invite. I did not accept it to move into his house in that moment because I knew he was not done with the karmic learning that he needed to go through. And I wasn't about to throw myself and our kids into that situation knowing how it was likely to go, and it's gone exactly that way. So, I'm glad that I didn't. But they all interpreted me as having some big long plan while telling me that they believed that he had a plan, when I was very simply observing it and sitting here going, if y'all are telling me that it is not a good fucking situation over there and that you think this person is dangerous and the data that I'm giving you is not great, well then why don't you do something about it? I will help you, but at this point, y'all are pegging me as just the jealous ex. If I do something, nobody's going to listen to it, which is really fucking sexist, especially women to women, in my opinion. But none of them did. None of them did. No, of course. No. We have to protect our secrets. We have to protect our nasty pirateness. And no, because all men are the same, and the only way to possibly teach them how to not get them into life-threatening situations is to encourage them to be in life-threatening situations and then make sure that they fall apart and then to throw other people in the fucking bus. No, I don't think so. Anyways, Cabbit trilling. That's something I'm working on healing in this moment, is y'all are crazy and you want to blame me. I'll be happy when that thought pattern is alchemized fully into I love you human beings. So one of my favorite things though is that Greenbug always gets himself out of that stuff. He always up levels out of it. He always finds his way back to himself, and it's going through all this stuff, I found a lot more faith in myself just by learning to look for it through him. And that's something that if you've watched my videos for a long time, I've said. Spirit said the main thing about the focus, yes, the love is there and eventually union will be there, but that's kind of a bonus. The real beauty in it is what I have gotten to learn about manifesting, about myself, about light work, about everything, about healing. I was able to do it because I allowed myself to heal in a manner of my own choosing, at a pace of my own choosing, and in a way of my own choosing, regardless of whether anyone else thought it was right, crazy, or anything. And otherwise, I was respectful of any sort of 3D dynamics, whether I liked them or not, because that is a part of who I am. Also, I'm an astrologer, I'm a psychic, and I love psychology. It's not fucking rocket science to recognize when two unhealthy people get into rebound relationships from two different people where they gave themselves no fucking time to heal, and one of them has borderline and the other has reactive attachment, that it will eventually burn itself out. And it's been going about as paced. There's been different times and it's okay, timing was off here and there, but there's a lot of pirates involved, and then I had my own emotions and stuff, so it's no, it's doing just fine. All of them invited me into the drama at some point, and I was y'all don't need my help. And on top of that, you already got my name on your lips all the fucking time and trying to use me to do it. Even he did it. And I'm see, y'all don't need my help. I would rather be over here working on myself and working on my healing. And in doing that, like, I found my faith in him, and it was a really beautiful thing because, like, when I say I have faith in people, like, I feel like a lot of people go to this, like, Christian-y, faithy thing. They do so when I say I'm praying, too, and it's like prayer belongs to a lot of different spiritual paths. It really doesn't belong to any, but a lot of paths use it. It's communication with the universe. It's an asking or a receiving or a giving or a focused communication with the universe, right? And the same thing with faith. Like, I'm really aware that there are a lot of crazy people who use faith for a lot of crazy things. I don't consider myself one of them, but everybody has their own perspectives. But when I talk about faith in people, like, I feel like a lot of people go to this whole place of like, oh, she only believes only good things will happen. No, I talk about the good things more than I talk about the shadows that I know are going to happen, because I want more good things to happen than shadows, and I understand how manifestation works. So I focus on what I want instead of what I do not want. But when I say I have faith in people, like all humans, I have faith in our shadows as much as I do in our light. Like, and I realized that a lot of us go into relationships looking for only the light. We don't want to see any of the shadows. And most people, like, the minute that somebody does something that is not like, ooh, yummy, like, they immediately go, oh, that's not the kind of attention I want. You're a bad person. They focus on that. And then they, like, collect all of those. I have always been the type that's like, I mean, I have deal breakers. I certainly do have deal breakers in relationships, in all relationships, friendship, family, romantic, all of that. But most things I find adorably human. I'm like that. I like that. And, you know, I realized that being more myself brought me more faith and brought me more abundance and brought more, I don't know, like beneficial, benevolent situations for everybody that interacted with me. I think that's why they get so mad when, like, when it either gets to a point where I'm like, okay, you're way too attached to me, or it gets to a point to where it's like they are demanding too much of me, and then they release themselves because I'm like, I need to take space. And they get really mad, and it's like, I must be really high value for it to go that way. Anyways, I love knowing what all of his flaws are. I love knowing what all of his light are, what all of his shadows are, and knowing that actually it's his shadows that bring him into the light every time. And I used to be so afraid that I had to rescue him all the time because he could keep going back into his shadows. And as we've talked, as I've observed things, as I've noticed everybody doing whatever they would do naturally, without me inserting myself into what should be done and things like that, most of the time. Because I'm a natural teacher, so it took a little bit to get to that place where I could just listen to somebody talking about stuff, and like my mind's going, shouldn't do that, shouldn't do this, you should do that, you should do this, but I just kept most of it to myself, and unless it was a really appropriate moment or they were asking. Or it was on my channel, right? Like, I put a lot of that energy into my channel. I'm really, really glad that I did, too. So I love it because it's like, whereas before I thought, like, this is something that is a problem. It's now like, it's not a problem at all. When I look at my own stories, it's the times I let my ego get me in traps that I've grown the most, when I learned how to get myself out of it. And it's when I've had more responsibility than I thought that I could handle, that I managed to achieve more than I thought that I ever could. And that's something I love about him. And I love the way he loves his kids. He's not always, he's not going to win a Father of the Year award, most especially for our oldest son and his daughter. But I know that he has tried. And with having much greater understanding as I do with the past, not just 22 months, but 20 years of knowing his pirates and everything, like, I'm actually really grateful to them also. Because in understanding the story of his life and of their lives, I can see why he's different. And I can see why I see it. And I can see why I'm attracted to his light, and why he's attracted to mine. And I can also see the reasons why the Jumanji stampede happened after he proposed to me on Facebook. And I used to be upset about it, especially because they did get my goat about it for a little while, and I was holding him only accountable, whereas it should have been a universal accountability as it is now. But I kind of like the story the way that it is. I like being able to say that I'm sitting here in a different park, in a different one that I found on a different night, to go out and do karaoke, to get my mind off things, to sing because I like to sing. I remember when I started doing karaoke, and he was like, "What?" And I'd always wanted to go, but I didn't go because I wanted him to go with me because I was scared to go alone. And he was like, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm doing karaoke." And he goes, "Oh, you always wanted to do that?" And I said, "Yeah, because I'm focusing on keeping commitments to myself," which is something that I started doing early on. Like, instead of making a bunch of commitments to him or to other people, it's like, how many commitments do I have to myself? And I wanted to start with that one, and I did. And I've had so many fun adventures. Like, I can go to almost any town now, and all I got to do is look for a karaoke where that doesn't look like it's going to get me hurt. And then go in and have fun. And I'm really, really glad that I've done that. It also turned into having karaoke nights with our boys. So we've got lots of great memories of that at a pub that Rudy found beforehand, which, I mean, that's when we were in the fight again, so there's some squishy memories in there too. But I think it's beautiful that it ended up working out this way, that we ended up going there while he was entrapped in the house with the karmics. Like, we're gonna go have fun whether you're gonna be tangled up or not, Dad. But I love that too, and that's another reason, see, that he picks really great places when he lets himself. I've always loved it when he lets himself be himself. That's probably been the hardest thing with him being tangled up with pirates. None of them like him as him. None of them love him as him. And it's mostly because they don't have the self-love to be able to have the capacity to love him as him. And so then it's like a constant competition, to where when he's with me, he feels like he can be himself and he wants to be himself all the time. But then when he's around the pirates, and a lot of there's pirates at work too, it's like, no, you have to fit like this certain image. And I just love it. I love it when he's himself, and that's always when he reaches out to me too. That's another thing that Spirit taught me too. Like, when we're not in communication, whether it's for a short moment or a long moment, that's a good thing, because that means we're out of alignment. That means he's not being himself. And I don't want to connect with somebody. I don't want to connect with him when he is not him, you know? I want to connect with him when he's him, because it's always been more magical in those moments, and that's always when he's done it. And that's why I've always told him, like, you don't have to worry about me pursuing you. You're coming to me. And it'll happen when you find yourself. Because that's how it's always worked out. Like, when we first met, it was not intended to be like this long-term thing. There were so many factors and so many reasons why it didn't make sense to try to make it a relationship. And there weren't really cell phones back then. And he had like barely a broken pager. So even when I had a cell phone, he didn't have a cell phone. But we ended up synchronistically running into each other a lot. And in ways that I can guarantee you, it wasn't like he set it up and I didn't know. Like, no. No, it didn't happen that way. And that sort of stuff has happened again over the last 22 months. Except the beauty of it is us having kids. There's plenty of other reasons that we need to connect throughout life. And our youngest is still 10, still got another 8 years, sorry. Or sorry, not sorry. You know what I mean? Like, it's there. And I'm not worried about the rest, because pirates always pirate themselves the worst in the end. It's kind of a funny thing to say. That's part of my thing about, like, y'all don't need my help. But, I mean, if I'm going to be thrown under the bus and stuff, I'm not going to keep anybody's secrets, because that's, I mean, why? Why would I hold myself down with that stuff? And when I have feelings and I want to talk about them, I'm going to talk about them. Because it's the wonderfulness of having a YouTube channel, having vlogs and Facebooks and stuff. Like, I like looking back at the memories of it later, you know? And you know what? I love thinking about, I mean, whether my next relationship is back with my DM Rudy or whether it's with somebody new. Like, I'm hella romantic, and I like that about me. Like, to be able to sit down and do 40 Reasons I Love Someone, to be able to sit here 22 months after a bunch of pirating and potatoing and immaturity, and to feel grateful for all of this, and to be thinking about, like, not just old reasons that I love Rudy, but, like, newer ones. Like, to me, that's pretty profound. I love that. Like, I love that about us, and I love that just about me. Like, and you know what? I am highly, highly amused by the amount of pirates, the karmics, effectively, who are already, like, I mean, if it weren't for the fact that they are offended that I exist at all, I might have been a little more merciful and, like, just kept the stuff in my journal. But it is highly, highly amusing to me that they are so very, very offended by my Cabbit trails. Like, they don't hurt anybody. And if you are watching them and stalking me and doing all that stuff, you're kind of just torturing yourself at this point, because I am doing me as I have always been doing. No plotting, no planning, just observing and being myself and glowing and growing and being eccentric and a good mom and, I don't know, sometimes heroic. I try not to be heroic too much. My birthdayology, if you ever look up there's a book called The Secret Language of Birthdays, so they have a website. If you look it up, mine is The Day of Heroic Inevitability, which used to really bother me because I was like, I don't want to be everybody's hero, and I always end up being the rescuer anyways. And people are just like, I feel so safe with you, and I didn't mind it in a complimentary way, but then people cling to me because they want me to protect them and they want me to be their hero and tell them how things go, and I don't mind that when it's a healthy attachment. I do not like it anymore, and I didn't like it much then, but definitely don't like it now. And but I'm also in a place where it's like, it's kind of amusing that real life has opportunities where you can be heroic, and all of us talk about doing the right thing always and then don't, because, well, we might have done something shadowy in the past, or it might get awkward, or we might have to stand alone sometimes. And it's like, you know what, my birthday is the day of heroic inevitability. Why don't I just enjoy that experience sometimes, even if I'm wrong, even if it's weird? At least I get the story out of it. And I'm going to end this with, that's another one of my favorite things about Cabbit, is that he shared his stories with me. Some of them were not exactly true, but I like that. Sometimes I ask new friends that I'm like, will you just tell me a story even if you completely made it up? Because I miss it. You know, like, sad or not, I like that. But he gave me his stories, and I realized over time too that my trigger about him being deceptive was actually from my mother and father wounds. He can be deceptive, yes, but if you know cancers, men and women, they just have an emotional language, and they change their moods a lot, which changes their minds a lot, which can look a lot like lying. I have a Pisces sun too. There was a fair amount of some of that too going on for a while. I'm very earthy. I do not do it that way. At least I didn't do it that way. So when I learned to be able to understand that, it was like, okay. For one thing, everybody lies about some things, and, like, nobody is entirely honest. There's not a single being on this planet that is, and that's okay. And other people do change their minds a lot. We all have different ways of processing. That's what I loved about learning about Enneagram. It's like, oh, everybody does not process the same way, so there isn't a right or wrong way. There's just different ways that we all kind of eventually get to the same conclusion, right? I'm just going to say right because I know that it's right, but follow along with me if you're listening as if we're in a two-parted conversation. But I love that he shared his stories with me. We made new stories, and we're still making new stories. And so a lot of this, like, I think I kind of decided when the energy switch copycat energy came up that, like, this for me is about the stories. And I'll talk more about that, I think, in a different video, because it feels like that's a thing in and of itself that might be fun to explore with y'all watching. Anyways, thank you for watching. I'll catch y'all in whatever next video I do.